Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzanne Chin Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are visiting with Corydon Coppola of FlowWater, and he has a very, very interesting background in our field. And today, we're going to take a little spin, go down a little bit of a road and do something different. As you know, for many of our loyal listeners, we usually focus on wastewater, collection systems, industrial process wastewater treatment. But today we're going to come at it from a different angle. And that is from the angle of stormwater and how stormwater impacts wastewater, our collection systems and treatment, probably a lot more than many realize. And so I want to welcome you to the show and thank you for coming and being willing to share your knowledge with us, Corydon.
Thank you. This is great.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background, because you have some very, what I would consider interesting certifications that make you uniquely qualified to talk about what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, I come at it with a lot of different lenses. I'm a certified professional of erosion and sediment control. So I've trained over 50,000 engineers over the last 10 years on erosion control and sediment control and stormwater quality and regulations, new products, advancements, etc. I ran a distributorship where I created the erosion, geotextile, road fabric, hydromulch, seed, biotic earth, other product lines, erosion control, stormwater quality through 13 states, 5 locations. And
Wow.
the last going on 9 years, I've owned my own company where I manufacture advancements in storm drain inlet protection, dewatering systems, a new vision on that, along with other water quality concept-driven solutions. You brought up wastewater and stuff. Well, a lot of people look at nitrate and phosphate and carbons when they get in our water as waste. And so there's different ways of using my systems combined with other media that's out there that not a lot of people connect the dots on, where you can deal with these in a way where you treat them before they get to those facilities and have to go through other procedures to try and remove those contaminants.
Well, let's talk about that a bit, because we spoke before the show about regulation and stormwater, and we have to stop thinking about I think of it as an us-them scenario, like this is the wastewater, this is the stormwater, this is the potable. No, but how everything is interconnected. And what are some of the things that you feel we need to be looking at that, as it relates to stormwater and how stormwater impacts wastewater, that we can do to improve what we're doing or changing mindset that could make a huge difference?
Well, when you get into contaminants that are coming off of streets, when you get into wastewater from, let's say, hog wash facilities that go into basins, or lagoon treatments at waterworks facilities, any of those, if you get too much rain in them and they overflow, you're going to have those go to the places you don't want them to go. And that's a direct intersect. The combined sewer systems, which are a big part of and a large percentage of the systems out there, especially in the older, more established municipal areas, let's say East Coast, a lot of them north, Chicago areas and others. You have the combined sewer systems where you basically have a flood wall. When it gets over a certain system, you have sewer and wastewater and stormwater all going together into our bodies of water where we know we have to take care of it. So there's definitely an interchange where if you can put systems in place that flow faster and capture more and are easier to maintain, and maintenance is something that's ignored on a lot of levels throughout this process. On the bidding side of it, where all of a sudden you're adding costs that aren't in the initial bid, which are dollars coming from somewhere, or on the solution side, where if it's not bid in on the low bid project, it's the first thing to get disappeared. So whether it's municipality, engineers, any structure that's in charge of their areas or projects, maintenance has to become part of that overall equation, or we're never going to win that battle.
I like how you said that, because often I've been hearing this quite a bit in conversations where it's built on the cost rather than, or no, the price rather than the cost, the full cost of ownership on that product or on that solution. And you touched on that briefly, that we need to have a mind shift in how we design these projects to make sure that we incorporate the long range, what you were saying, maintenance, because that really is what is the true cost of a project or anything that we are doing that comes after the fact. And so with that said, what would you recommend that people need to be looking at as they're putting together these specs for these projects that they really need to be thinking about, so that they're not left with this, okay, they get this, they bought it on low bid, and now they've got all these extra expenses that they never budgeted for. And it's kind of like, oh, by the way, and nobody likes those, oh, by the way.
Right. Well, I think that part of it is when you have engineering firms and municipalities that are making lists and calling out products and stating this has been proven, let's use this or something equal, and then it's up to that person or company to prove that it's an equal, is a nice start at it. But there's still the disconnection between design and field. And a lot of the time when you get in the field, the project manager gets told by the company that's been doing it forever that this is the way we do it. So they change it. And it's not looking at maintenance costs or anything else. It's looking at what's available and what's easiest to use for them. But when it's educated at all levels and there's a connection between that and you eliminate that gap, you take the cut, copy, and paste aspect of it out of the equation to where they're recommending guidelines or product accepted lists or standards that have been accepted in that area for a while. Some of them are antiquated in from years ago where maintenance isn't even a thought, to where it's specified per project, not let up to the contractor to choose. And you brought it up earlier, that cost now versus long term. They've low bid the project, so they're going to pick the project or solution to them that's the lowest cost now, where maintenance is going to get built in later if they get called on and it gets brought into the equation and they have that time to fix it before it's a problem. That's where the gap has to be solved. So if we start designing it instead of cut, copy, and pasting, start including maintenance in on that, it solves the whole problem, because that long-term goal gets thought of and solved by the people that are in charge of thinking of that and solving that. So, yeah.
Not that we want to get into anything political, but we've all kind of observed it, that we're having these crazy weather patterns, lots and lots of water, big storm surges. How do you see, as someone that's in that space, that is now really starting to have a significant impact, if it is, on wastewater infrastructure and what they're having to deal with at the plant because of these storm events? And are there some measures that cities can start taking to stay ahead of that curve, knowing that, I mean, it kind of looks like this is a problem that's not going to disappear anytime soon?
Well, there's a few. First off, we measure a lot of things based on 100-year storm events, but these 100-year storm events are happening every 4 or 5 years. So the whole infrastructure that it's built on is off. If you want to update that to where we know what an actual 100-year storm is, you're going to raise those levels. So you're not just designing until it fails, when it's failing a lot more now because of those factors. If you, again, include maintenance, If you, prime example, treat the water that gets contained, and you were talking about how you stay ahead of the curve, have solutions in there that are the easiest for the contractor to use, that fall in line with what's designed. And if you have a connection between municipal design and contractor, approved product lists really become irrelevant, because the winning products win out that are going to solve the solution and keep things efficient for everybody. Did I skirt around your question?
No, I think you kind of hit on it, and this that because these storms are, we have to be willing to look at other solutions, not just this is the way it's always been done. I think that's always been something that's tough in working with a lot of technology companies, myself for marketing, is that introducing something new into the marketplace always, comes up against so much resistance, because it seems like there's a lot of risk aversion. And it's that attitude, like you were saying, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, maybe that's not the way we should continue to do it, because what worked 50 years ago, like what you were saying, the 100-year storm event, now we're in that scenario where those 100-year storm events are happening every 4 to 5 years. So we can't keep using the same principles that we once did. Because
you're copying and pasting approved
right, I love that.
A lot of
Copy and
solutions are
pasting.
antiquated in.
Yeah, it is. It's the ideas that we had are now becoming more and more obsolete. So let's talk a little bit about some of the technologies that you're involved with, because one of the things that you mentioned, about the chemicals and anything was sediment. And how does sediment, I want to know this for my own self, how does sediment really impact a wastewater system when you were talking about sediment control and capturing it in basins? And, we talk about storm events. There's a lot of I&I that comes into a system during a storm. How can this help wastewater treatment facilities when there's a huge storm event? Right. What can this prevent, or I would say lessen their burden of what they're going to have to deal with, knowing that our climate, what they're having to deal with is changing now?
Well, whether it's wastewater or waterworks or any kind of situation where you have contained water that has stuff in it that you need to treat or deal with. Again, first thing is increase your storm event coverage, what you're designing for, which allows you to put in perimeter controls, whether it's our high flow silt fence or you have the sediment logs you can stack up and stake. There's different solutions that are going to give you that additional coverage. You could also do empty basins that become flood over zones, so you just give yourself more room. But by creating those alternative basins, you can use our pump and tube dewatering bags, which flow at 192 gallons a square foot a minute instead of 80, which is the standard. They capture 91% of the sediment. Sediment, based on what you said, is a great carrier. So like on phosphates, nitrates, they bind to different things. One of them, cedar chips, and that's how you can remove the nitrates, whereas the phosphates bind to the sediment, and that's what carries them downstream. So the more sediment you have in there, the more things that bind to it. I may have flipped the phosphate nitrate. I do that occasionally, but the people that know, it's true on one end. Now, also what sediment does is the more bullets you have in that water, the more it's hitting the stream and creating more sediment. So you're just increasing the load because you have carriers coming down, hitting that side and creating more cars that are carrying contaminants downstream. So it's all part of that equation. Basins that they push on a lot of these construction projects or on wastewater facilities or on industrial sites as overflow mechanisms when they have bigger storms, which is stormwater. That's how their waters are raising. Any other industrial spill would be a leak or a contaminant or something happening in their facility, correct? Because those are usually discharged on the whole point source and non-point source separation that they keep trying to create. So that's how sediment plays in that a lot. But you're not just dealing with sediment, you're dealing with the debris and trash and rock and everything else. And all of those are going to become carriers for different contaminants as they can go downstream. Carbon, that's a different beast in itself. You either burn it out or you induce, there's different systems that will turn that into rubber balls so that you can filter it with our products downstream. So whether it's dewatering bags, whether it's that flow faster, capture more, take up less room, run multiple, eliminate downtime whenever you're moving water, dredging, any kind of project. Or if you have a storm drain around your facility or some kind of port where that water is going to go to, if you have those spills in those wastewater facilities, that's where our magnet on top storm drain inlet protection that flows faster and captures more and makes maintenance easier because you don't have to move the grate, which ties into the whole safety push everybody's concentrating on right now. I'm looking at you, sorry, I should look at the screen. But that whole safety portion, not moving the grate, making it easier for labor, which is harder and harder to find skilled labor as we get into this field, as everybody's spreading out in jobs. Our undergrate has replaceable sacks, overflows built in, reusable frames, which lowers cost long term. Not looking at now, looking at total water quality solutions that are going to be better performing and budget conscious for everybody. So that's sort of one of my skills on it, if that's what you were looking for sure.
Yes. And like, if you were to pick a few things, like one or two things that, let's say, a city with a combined system, who during these rain events, their wastewater treatment plant is really taking a hard hit. I mean, it's like all hands on deck. And like you were saying earlier, labor shortages, that people are being tasked with doing more with less people. And so when there is a major event and that flow is coming at them like a biblical proportion flood into that plant, epic biblical proportion, all hands on deck.
Holy Moses.
Yeah, holy Moses or holy Noah.
Right.
What are some of those things? What are a few things? We don't want to turn this into a, infomercial, but
Right.
what are some things that cities with these type of systems, because they know it's not going to change anytime soon,
Right.
start maybe implementing on the stormwater side, and maybe right at the plant headworks, to ease that burden during those major events to help them? Because I am sure also when there's that influx, when you were saying about the sediment and whatnot getting caught, more of that is coming down into the plant, which is going to make it harder to treat before they release it to the receiving waters. So all that said, just a few things that they could really think about that would be easy to start.
Having hands-on, prime example, our pump and tube dewatering bags. They take up less room, so you can have them available. They hook on the end of the pump and the hose that they already have there to treat their lagoons and stuff when they have issues, flooding, whatever it may be. So it's products that their staff can use on site. You don't have to wait for the big sand filter tanks and other things, which are great, awesome solutions, but not everybody can afford those or have the time to wait for those. So that gives you emergency reaction. Have those magnet on top, easy flow inlet protections with overflow, without, with curb. It's made per size so that if you do have a spill on site, throw them down. If you have contaminants you're dealing with directly, then explore the other media out there, whether it's carbons, phosphate, nitrates, acid. I mean, I can go on and on. Things people rust. I mean, the list goes on. Oxides. But if you have that available to combine with that, you can have that for the water to go through and then have that on your storm drain inlets where you're going to capture and filter it before it goes down and in. It's all about protecting your underground infrastructure systems when you're looking at stormwater and long term. A lot of the industrial or wastewater stuff can get created when you have some of those crack or damage, et cetera, and it takes out everything from that underground and brings it up. So if you can stop that stuff, not only going to reduce the maintenance to where it pays for itself, again, looking at long-term costs, not now, you're going to protect those lakes, rivers, bodies, and streams and reduce the amount of times those burst. So you have those issues we were discussing earlier.
Right.
Solution 2, those basins and lagoons that they're at, those dewatering bags, set them up where they're wanting alternative directions in that basin from one lagoon to the other or multiple. And you can induce media into our water as it's flowing through, whether it's meter injected and such, or like CO2 pumped in to deal with pH levels and regulate them. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. It's just educating yourself or going to the conferences. A lot of them out there ready to tell you. And having those run alternative ways. So as you're going, you're capturing on both sides and inducing on both sides and gradually lowering the levels of contaminants on whatever you're trying to clean out of that water. And then we can take some of that gray water and turn it back into white water, or take some of that horrible water and turn it into gray water where it can be reused for other things too. So it's all about, we know we're running out of water. You also brought up the whole storm events that are happening and the changing of the tide, I guess is what we want to call it, is we have stuff warming up north. And as that ice becomes vapor and water and rain and stuff, we have these larger rain events, which are coming even more and more, but those are increasing even more now because of the turbulent weather effects, whether it's global warming, whether it's water, the combined, however you want to look at it. Just as we age, you take that, and we just saw on the news that one of our lakes in California is at the highest levels it's been at. Well, why? Because we have the stuff melting up north that's in the solar system coming out, and that's going to get regenerated as well. So the effects coming from that, whether it's wastewater, stormwater, et cetera, when you have more water in play and more frequency of those turbulent events in play, is catastrophic in itself. But having to plan for those alternative weather events and seasonal changes that are going to be hitting all that as well. So we're not just on the old time parameters of March to September or whatever some areas work on, and realize these are starting earlier and ending later.
We have felt it here in northern Arizona. I believe like our monsoon season started a little bit earlier than it usually does. You know, heavy rain events, crazy rain events, hailstorms. You know, stuff that you'd never think that you would see in this part of the country. You know,
well, and as you have that ice melting or ice caps and all that, you're not going to have as much snow in the winter now as everything's warming up. So you're not going to have that refresh of the lakes coming. It's going to be continuous. So we have to figure out ways to contain it and filter it, not just filter it and have it move on. So there has to be a shift on it, especially on the western coasts in Arizona and in, because it's pretty tragic what we saw months ago. And now everybody's like, whoa, we have water. Well, let's look at the larger scope of what's going on, because that water is not going to stay there. It's going to be a cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, when you were saying about the sewer systems and protecting the underground infrastructure, is that a lot of these things, you know, what is it, non-source port pollution and whatnot, and things that get in the groundwater, nitrogen loading, all of that, is that cities don't like to admit this, but there is a lot of I&I, you know, and 70% of it, they've done studies on this, 70% of this is actually coming from house laterals on people's lawns. And so obviously municipalities can't fight that, but are there any things that they can do with rain events to maybe encourage consumers, residents, rain harvesting and whatnot, to maybe reduce the amount of flow that's going to have some of these toxins, because we do have this I&I issue, from entering the system in the first place, or just maybe reducing it? Maybe I'm totally off base here, but it was just like a thought. Like, is there a way that
there's multiple
homeowners could help? Homeowners could help with this too.
Right. Well, and it's all about hard armor and what's getting induced there and running off or off of the roofs, or the trash that's left out and so on. But it's embracing and educating yourselves. Municipalities, counties need to educate the public that this is what's happening if you do this. And it's not going to be everybody, but the bigger we can increase that percentage of people that are caring and doing it in alternative ways, the better. You ask if they can do it. There's already programs. There's cost sharing out there on so many incredible things, whether it's back in the day, Scour Stop was a company I ran for the first 6 years that took away hard armor and rock riprap and enabled vegetation to handle outlets and stuff. Well, what does that do? That reoxidizes the water as it's going through the vegetation and everything else. It helps take out more dirt and stuff as you're going through that vegetation, which grabs it instead of hard armor, which passes it downstream, which sometimes speeds it up and creates turbulence as it's going. So they have those for gutter systems where it's vegetation promoting that. The more green space you have, the better, which is better for stormwater absorption and everything else, which you absorb the stormwater, it's going to hit the groundwater, get resurfaced somewhere else, and that's filtering the water. We're using the earth systems to do what we need. But stormwater is the cleanest water you're going to find. Stormwater is never dirty till it hits here. The moment it hits the earth, it's dirty. So rain gardens, rooftops that can store them in the gutters off the the rain barrels to resurface into your gardens and everything else. Or some people use it for drinking water if it's clean and they can use it and filter it again. But it's all just changing your view and understanding. We have to care because our kids aren't at a point where they can, but they're the ones that are going to feel it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for, just this great conversation about, it's a little bit of a sensitive topic, but it's something that needs to be brought to the forefront and spoken about. And so for anybody interested that would like to maybe continue their own personal dialogue with Corydon, how can they reach you?
My website is flo-water.net. It's Frank Larry Oscar-water.net. You can call me, email me. It's all available on my website, but we have videos. We have Auburn videos, Virginia DOT testing, multiple avenues of testings and verifications and DOT approvals and so on, specifications, studies. Go to our website, check it out. If you'd like, give me a call. I'd love to talk to you.
And you're also available on LinkedIn. And it's his full spelling of his name is in the show notes because it's quite unusual. So that's how we connected. And I'm so glad that we did. And look,
do you have a minute for me to show you a video real quick? It'll take 10 seconds.
Yes, sure. What would you like to show us, Corydon?
So this is my Undergrade Easy Catch Pro. Those frames are independent pieces. The connectors are soldered underneath, so you're just screwing down, and you can replace parts to deal with different size grates. The bags Velcro on, so once they're soil laden after 18 to 20 cleanouts, you can replace the fabric and reuse the frames, lowering your costs, but promoting water quality, not just capturing until it's full and becomes a teacup to overflow and continue downstream. Or a practice now where people go poke holes in it so it won't flood. That eliminates that need because you're solving it. And you see how easy this is to go in.
Now, when they get filled, how are they cleaned out? Would you be using a combo truck to vacuum that out?
You can do that.
Okay.
I'm going to show you on the, I'm going to show you so that's in. I'm going to show the curb here, and we have one that juts in underneath as well, but this is magnet on top. It's a foam pillow that keeps the stuff out and filtered, so you have a double combo there. And then upstream on this one, we put that on both, and then had our magnet on top on the top one, and you see how much easier that is to put in, and the maintenance dollars gets drastically reduced because you're saving time. Now with that, we go to, sorry, I had to move your video. This is how they do maintenance on it currently, but you can vac truck it as well. This is that same site. They have seatbelt straps in there, so you're pulling it out. And this is after 1 month post-construction after their project. And look at the fines that are in there on this first one. And this is the one that had the magnet on top, so you're capturing most of the fines above grade. And look how much sediment and dirt's caught in there that would be in your rivers, lakes, underground infrastructure systems, etc. You time that by 2,000 openings per city, that adds up. Now with that one, very easy to put back in. Now this one is the one that didn't have the magnet on top. And look at all the fines, the dust that you're seeing transport out of that. You have overflows in all the corners, so flooding isn't an issue. But that's how easy the maintenance is.
Wow.
And you're done. And you Velcro the bags off and reuse those stainless steel frames over and over and over again.
I like that part. You want to reuse. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Oh,
Suzanne.
and thank you for sharing all of this. And for those of you listening, I hope that you've gotten a lot out of this. I know I've learned some new things and ways to just think about how everything is interconnected, that it is not an us and them. And we really do need to start embracing more of this one water concept, because as Corydon shared, it's all a big cycle. And, that was just, we don't think about it, but I loved when you said stormwater is the cleanest water there is. There we go. And we need to protect that and use it, that stormwater should be considered an asset. Great. And so thank you again, Corydon, for being on the show. And for those of you listening, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com/the2it group/B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.